Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, we get into a regular season finale for Grant McCasland and the Red Raiders and the final dust-up at Dan Law Field next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/Locked On College. Terms and conditions apply. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to see you once again. Wrapping up the week, heading into a busy weekend, and we'll begin at United Supermarkets Arena as it is the regular season finale, home finale, senior day, senior night, senior evening, whatever way you want to approach it for Texas Tech as they welcome the Baylor Bears to town. We'll get into some of obviously what we expect out of the matchup and some of what's on the line for the Red Raiders. And you may need a stiff drink as we try to process as well some tie-breaking scenarios in the Big 12 Conference because there are some streams being crossed, I guess you might say there. But first, just wanted to begin the conversation with some of these seniors. And as you said yesterday, we were talking about some of the roster and what we anticipate for the offseason. Obviously, still remains very fluid in a lot of ways, but we know with a couple of guys, at least, it'll be the final time we see them at United Supermarkets Arena. And, you know, in the case of a guy like Joe Toussaint or maybe even a Warren Washington, guys that will, whenever their time is done as Red Raiders, will leave here much appreciated, I think, by the Texas Tech fan base.
Yeah, and you certainly hope that that it sounds like there's some hope there, but you certainly hope that Warren is in uniform and able to play in his last home game as a college player. You know, like I said, got to meet his dad after one of these games about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He listens to this show. He kind of tapped me on the shoulder and he's like, "Hey man, I'm Warren's dad. I watch y'all's podcasts." And I was like, "Man, your kid's great." I mean, he's just, you know, got the Barry White voice going and he's just like gentle giant kind of thing. I hate this part of the transfer portal. It's like you just get to know a person and kind of their game, their personality, what they mean to a fan base. And it's like, man, we just said hello. Now we're saying goodbye. And you know, and then Joe Toussaint, what a blessing he's been. I think you and I talked about when he was added. I talked to people up in Morgantown, and I think what we had heard was great guy. If you're going to ask him to do too much, you know, be careful about that. But he's going to fit in and all those things. And I think based on the way he was described to us, I think he's probably exceeded most of those expectations.
For me, yes, 100%.
Yeah. And he is not perfect. He is flawed. I think it at times – him playing extended minutes, it does get him, and you know when he has to try to carry it, and I just kind of miscast. Some of this is not his fault. Some of this is like, man, who else is gonna do it? But there's been some of these games early and recently and in between that it's just been fun to watch him compete. He's tough. He's the classiest, nicest, most respectful kid on that team. But he's also like the one that comes running when Brock Cunningham does his thing. You get on the floor, there's a loose ball, Joe Toussaint, and that New York mentality, he gets after it. But he's, he shows up early. He just really like appreciates and relishing like where he is, who he's around. The fact that somebody gave him the keys to a team and said, "Hey man, go run it. Go be the point guard for this deal." It's been fun. So yeah, those guys will be missed, man. But there's like some, and this is heavy praise here for Joe Toussaint. There's some like Dadrion Taylor Demerson qualities here that come with him, and that there's a lot of intangibles that he brings that you can't really see that I think everybody benefits from. and I think that'll be hard to say goodbye to.
And I haven't followed every game of Joe Toussaint's career, but I would have to think the most significant role that he's played for a team, or the biggest load that he's carried for a team, has been this season. Do you think that's a fair statement to make, going back to West Virginia or even prior?
Yeah, at Iowa before that, not even close. Yeah, because he's playing by far the most minutes. I think he's being asked to do the most, and I think for Texas Tech, it was a bit of a godsend. It's like we need somebody out there that can come help and can take shots, can facilitate, can be a great on-ball defender, because that's what he doesn't really get enough credit for. We talk about his offense a lot, but I mean, look at the game against West Virginia the other night, or against Oklahoma State. How many steals he had, and he's like, they throw it to the post and like you don't even see it coming, and Joe Toussaint comes out of nowhere and like comes underneath and like pokes that ball loose and stuff like that. But it's his on-ball defense, and it's holding guys accountable. That's what I mean by like an intangible. Like he's not afraid to like be an extension of Grant, and Grant gets onto him. But Joe's one of the few guys that will honestly get onto other players, and I think they respect him for it, because they're like, there's no argument. It's just like, yeah, man, because Joe doesn't say a whole lot, but when he does, but his on-ball defense and just being able to put him on one of the best ball handlers or facilitators on the other team, it's just one less thing you have to worry about.
Man, and for Washington, I regret, obviously, that he's had to miss the time that he's had, clearly because of what the impact would have been for the team, but also for him individually. I would have loved to have seen kind of statistically what he would have really blossomed into down the stretch. This is just kind of hypothetical because we didn't see that, but for my money's worth, one of the more impactful big men that you've had last 10 years, last 15, 20 years. I mean, and there's some elite company, obviously, because you've had some elite teams within that range. But I think I would have taken him and put him on just about any of those teams and felt good about the impact that he could have made. So he's in fairly rare air. Whenever you look back at Texas Tech record books and many years gone by down the road, obviously wouldn't anticipate him to be there because of the time that was missed. But he turned out to be a really, really good player for you. And again, I would just have to say, whenever he signed up to be a Red Raider, I'm looking at the measurables and thinking, okay, yeah, I'm excited about what you could get out of this guy. But he would also be in the category of someone who exceeded my expectations as a fan. Maybe I just had too small of expectation, but that's the way I feel about it.
And really, it's like every addition they made in the offseason, portal-wise, they all exceeded our expectations.
That's
really.
true.
I mean, think about it. I mean, every one of them. It's like, yeah. And like you said, maybe to your point, maybe we just weren't expecting enough. I mean, but like think about like Curran Walton. He exceeded expectations too. There's a returner.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Warren is. You could have put him in any kind of system. And allowed him to do some different things. I think he probably touches the ball when healthy in this offense more than in most offenses he's been in. There's not a lot of, back to the basket activity with him per se, but I think that using him at the top of the key and then like letting him operate out of the elbow as like of a passer, and playing through him at times was really good, whenever they were doing that. And he just positively affects the game, because he rebounds just enough. He scores just enough. He's a lob threat. And so that's one of those intangibles that you're guarded differently when he's on the floor. And like, Joe and Pop and some of those guys see a bit more open space when Warren's out there just by his presence, because you have to, respect his ability to, have it thrown up and then go hammer it down. And so you can't leave him. Anyway, but yeah, these guys will be, but you're going to go try to replace them. That's and to the one thing about Joe is that they'll desperately try to replace is just a bigger version of Joe. It's not a knock on Joe. It just is what it is. I mean, but you will try to replace him with a bigger version. It'd be hard to find a bigger version of Warren Washington, though.
Hey, if he's out there though, come on down.
Maybe a heavier one, but I don't know if you're going to get like big, like the kid from playing for Purdue, who's like what, 8'3". I mean, he's not really. He's like, I think he's a legit 7'4", Zach Edey.
Yeah.
So
Well, I want to find another guy that can be so disruptive on the defensive end of the floor. I always love those guys, and you've made some serious hay with those kind of guys in a more recent era. Talking about somebody like Zach Smith or Tariq Owens, obviously, who could really impact things defensively and be disruptive around the rim. And I think Warren Washington was headed into keeping that kind of company, though that's some record-setting kind of company we got to talk about if we're talking about Tariq Owens. So high praise, and would love the opportunity to see Washington again this season or possibly this weekend. As for what's happening this weekend with the Baylor Bears coming to town, first, today's episode brought to you by Amazon's Fire TV, your destination for sports, from live games to highlights and beyond. Fire TV offers incredible viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick, which you can just plug, boom, right into your existing television. And you got access to millions of movies and television episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the upcoming college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. And that's not all. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from all of your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV or Alexa devices. And if you haven't done it already, you don't know what you're missing. Trust me on that. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. One of the more interesting ball games, I guess, of the regular season, as far as, a loss to forget. You kind of just move on from those, and that was a loss at the end of the day, so you had to do it. But it was one of the more interesting ones, I think, intangibly to me for Texas Tech, Chris, because when you're doing it without Washington on the road against such a good team like what Baylor has, long, deep, talented, and yet there was still some drama involved as far as the issue being in doubt. And again, maybe my expectation was just too low going into that night, so I shouldn't have been blown away, but here we are.
We're just guilty of just the lowering the bar across.
This team ain't going to do anything.
Shame on us, man. Well, when you played these guys the first time, I think it was like February the 6th or so. That was when you were kind of battling the flu. Warren didn't play in this game. It had nothing to do with his recent injury. It was just he was just out. You had several guys kind of playing under the weather, and yet it was a 6-point game. I think you look at the foul count at that game, it was 25 fouls called on you, 15 against Baylor. Some of that was at the end when you're trying to foul to stop the ball and all that, so it bloated that figure and all that. But, you had some really good performances by like Joe and Chance McMillan. Darion Williams played really well. Pop was a bit off that. I mean, he had 11 points, I think. But Ray J. Dennis was the best player on the floor, I thought. This is also the game that this is a pretty significant game for Baylor too, because Langston Love, their super sub, who was maybe in line to be sixth man of the year in this league, he went down toward the tail end of that game, and he's only played, I think, like 10 minutes since then. So he's basically missed the month of February. And I think there's some chatter, and early March, I think there's some chatter he's close to coming back. It's an ankle issue, but it's made them really thin at the guard spots, just in scoring and in general. They just don't have a lot of punch off the bench minus him. I don't feel sorry for them because you've been dealing with your own issues. But Baylor, to their credit, they've kept their head afloat, and they've won some big-time games, and they barely lost to Houston, and they come back and beat Texas the other night and all those things. So they're going to be a handful. And what I remember, too, is this was really the debut kind of the Robert Jennings, Emily Yalaho, and there was some Kyron Lindsay activity that game, too, of trying to fill the void in the post. And you're doing it against Yev Misi, who is going to be a one-and-done guy. And he had 17 and 7, and you just were picking up fouls all over the place. Now you're maybe minus Lindsay, if I don't know where that stands. But in Warren's a question mark, so it could be the EY and the Robert Jennings show against Misi again. But all that being said, you were right there in this thing. Baylor's just scary because they have a ton of upside, and they're extremely efficient. This is a team that plays slower at times, but still averages like 82 a game. They shoot threes at one of the best percentages in the country as a team. They get to the free throw line more as any team in the country for the most part. But these are like top 30 type stats out of 350 teams.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a tough matchup. But the reward for beating them, if you can do it, it could be significant.
Yes. So everybody buckle up now for me to tell you how it will be significant. With the Texas Tech win over Baylor on Saturday, Tech would clinch a double bye in the Big 12 tournament. Then if Kansas beats Houston, Tech would clinch the 3 seed. If Kansas loses to Houston, Tech and Baylor would go to a second tiebreaker, which the Bears would win due to their win over Iowa State. Tech would then be the 4th seed. Tech loses to Baylor on Saturday. If Kansas wins, they're going to secure the 4th seed. If Kansas wins, BYU wins, and Texas Christian wins, there will be a tie break between Texas Christian and BYU for the 5th seed.
You could keep going. It's a mess. I mean, it's a mess. I think in its simplest form, because this is what I'm all about.
Give us this.
When I see these things, I'm like, just dumb it down for me, man. I'm for the most part, I need the Crib Notes version. Like remember in college we used to go to the bookstore to get the. It's like, okay, you to Kill a Mockingbird, you got to write a report on it. It's like, where's the little yellow condensed version book,
right?
Where they had, is that what they were called? I
think there was a man named Cliff taking notes out there somewhere.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember what the exact term for that, but yeah, it was basically like it was a way to kind of have to not have to
cut a corner.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So that's what we're gonna do here. I think in its simplest form, if you win, you're going to get a double bye, okay, and you're going to improve your resume in the Big 12 conference and just your NCAA tournament chances dramatically. I think because I think Baylor's net ranking is at 13 right now. Yours actually went from after you beat Oklahoma State, it was at 35. I think it dropped actually to 37. So you're just kind of, but you're going to do yourself a lot of good if you beat Baylor. But if you win, you're guaranteed a double bye in the Big 12 tournament. So you're going to finish either 3rd or 4th. Like, I don't care what else happens. However, if you lose in its simplest form, you just need Houston to beat Kansas on Houston's home floor. And Houston has all the motivation in the world. They've got to win that game. Otherwise, they share the title with Iowa State. If they lose it, they share the Big 12 title. If they win it, they are Big 12 champs outright. 1 seed, all that comes with it, potential number 1 seed in the actual NCAA tournament too, and all that. But there's a lot of other layers to this. BYU involved, TCU involved. There's a way for Houston actually to drop to a 3 seed. I mean, which I'm like, huh? If Scooby Doo. If certain things happen, so. But in its simplest form. It's like you win, on Saturday, tomorrow, you're either a 3 or a 4 seed. And if you don't win, you just need to ensure that Kansas loses to Houston. If Kansas were to win and you were to lose, I'm not even going to get into it. It's a mess, but you could drop all the way to I think 7th, depending on other things playing out. So,
wow.
I don't know. We tried to we talked about how are we going to approach this, because I'm not reading all this, man. I'm not going to get into all the ifs and whatever. It's a mess. It speaks to how good the league is, though. Think about it. You could be a 3 seed. You could essentially beat Baylor, be a 3 seed, and then you could be staring at your first Big 12 tournament game on Thursday could be against like a 7-seeded Kansas. I mean, that's not out of just the realm of possibility that like a Baylor or a Tech, if they were to be the 3 seed, that could be their first game on that Thursday of Big 12 tournament week. And you're like, this is our opener? I mean, but that's, so anyway, I think that part is kind of wild, but it just speaks to how good this league is, how deep it is.
Man, and I'm excited too. I hate to look too far ahead, but whenever the Arizona Wildcats are in the mix as well, you expand a little further, and we'll just get even more difficult in the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Arizona because we we have had a lot of, like Tech and Texas are playing baseball for potentially one of the last times for a long time this weekend. And we've gone through some of these last games with OU and all that. And I was watching the game between Arizona and UCLA. I have no healthy respect for a rival like that. I'm not paying attention to that, but the commentating and they're talking about like Arizona just hammering UCLA, and Arizona's in line to be a 1 or a 2 seed in this tournament, but it's like, hey, this is the last Arizona UCLA game. And so there's other parts of this being played out elsewhere with these games not being played anymore, but everybody preparing for a new home and all those things. But yeah, Arizona going to be a real welcomed addition. And shout out to the previous coaching staff for basically not wanting KJ Lewis and not really going all in on KJ Lewis out of fairly nearby, proximity. Look him up. He wanted to kind of come here, and he had 18 off the bench for Arizona.
You're talking about our previous coaching staff.
Oh, I'm talking about our previous coaching staff.
Oh, okay. I thought we were laughing at somebody else. And
they did not want KJ Lewis, and now he's good enough to play heavy minutes for the 5th-ranked team in the country. We have players that wanted to come here that we really, we should have taken all over the place, but we told them no. But I'm thankful for Joe and Warren. Happy senior day. Yeah. You know what you're going to see too tomorrow in the arena, which is very rare, and you be prepared for it because you're going to see it. And you don't see this in college much at all, but it's like a lot of zone defense, and it's going to come in spurts. You're going to see like kind of this tandem 2-3 or 1-1-3, almost kind of like a 1-3-1 at times. But it's going to like, we dare you to shoot it, and like sometimes when you dare shooters to shoot it, they either make them all or miss them all. It's amazing what a zone does to somebody's brain. Like, okay, like they're okay with me shooting it. They're not going to really guard me. They're just there's room here. And then you just clank them all, and then it just becomes contagious. But then sometimes, man, it's like you pass around a little bit, knock down a couple of threes, and it's like the coach is like, okay, go back to man.
Yeah, we've seen some of that play out, within the same game, like first half versus BYU, second half versus BYU.
Yes, we have.
Make them all, miss them all.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to see any night in the Big 12 conference. A couple of quick hitters to round out our conversation before we get out of here, Chris. First, today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors. And eBay Motors has you covered with everything you need to maintain your vehicle and keep that ride or die ride on the road. Or if you're just looking to elevate your car's game to the next level of performance, they got what you're looking for. With roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, superchargers, and accessories of all kinds to fit your style. Whether you're looking for speed, power, or design, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts to perfectly fit what you need. So just head over today to ebay.com/motors, where you're going to always find exactly what you're looking for, and with no risk because of eBay's guaranteed fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit just right every time, or your money back, keeping you burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to keep your ride or die ride on the road and moving your life forward at ebay.com/motors. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions do apply. You mentioned it already. Over at Dan Law Field at Rip Griffin Park, you've got a Red Raider Longhorn meeting happening. I don't know what else there is left on the sports calendar as far as a collision with Texas is concerned, but this is probably the one that'll get the most attention that's left.
I think this is it. Yeah, I really do. I think this is it. They are up here. It's tricky time. It's the first conference series. It's also the students are gone. Spring break is basically today, yesterday, ish, and so you wonder kind of what it's a bit of a different baseball crowd than it would. It'll affect the basketball game crowd, I think, quite a bit. But baseball crowd maybe is like an older season ticket holder fan base, and so maybe you're not heavily relying on the student crowd. So I don't know what to think there, but it'll be spicy, I'm sure. Tim Tadlock has even said, we try to schedule A&M in baseball for like 10 or 11 years, and it just hasn't happened. And you kind of wonder where the things will sit here Almost maybe sounded like there was more hope to schedule Oklahoma in baseball a bit more than either Texas or A&M. But yeah, and I think there's still some of the emotions from a week ago, the basketball thing, and it'll be a bit different, obviously. But and I think Texas is coming off of a stretch where they've really struggled. I think A&M beat them up earlier this week. I think they lost their series this past weekend. I think there's a lot of questions about Texas Tech's pitching. Not offensively, never is many questions there, but I think, do you have enough arms, and specifically out of the pen, so it's all show and tell this weekend at Dan Law. So we'll kind of see where it goes.
Yeah. Do you think, and I get why these delicate little prairie flowers in Bryan College Station or in Austin, couldn't stomach the possibility of being beaten. So why even schedule the game? We all understand that it's a very delicate dance, trying to massage the perception of everything within college sports. And nobody does a more delicate dance historically than the Aggies, I suppose. Yeah. And maybe Texas is going to join that conversation. They're both just probably off the table. But do you think there's any separation between those two? Like, who would be a longer shot to get something scheduled? We've got a decade's worth of that experience with the Aggies, although we're arriving at a time where you did get a basketball game scheduled with them for the next calendar. But I'm just wondering, like, over the years to come, what are the longer odds when it comes to either scheduling Texas or possibly the Aggies?
Yeah, I think there's some possibilities from some of that neutral site stuff, like some of the midweek stuff. I just don't know if you're going to do the traditional, hey, come here for 3 games, we'll go there for 3 games type scenario. And, Tadlock laid it out the best. The problem with baseball, unlike any other sport, is that there's only so many people to play, especially regionally. And you've got so many games, and, that's why you're always going to try to play New Mexico or New Mexico State or the UTAs or the Dallas Baptists and schools like that, because there's only so many midweek opportunities that you can ultimately have if you're Texas Tech. And some of these other schools, the same thing. And so maybe there's some midweek opportunities there that you can kind of figure something out. Maybe meet in Arlington, maybe meet in, I don't know, but I wouldn't just remove it from the table. But I'm not sure if you're closer to playing one than the other. It comes down to relationships with the head coaches and the administration, all that stuff. I think, honestly, though, the basketball thing was Grant and Buzz Williams. I think that to each of their credit, I think they were like, let's do this. And they're like, cool. Yeah, and they kind of cut out, there was no politicking. It was just like, what do you think? Yeah, man, like, let's go. And so it's just a straight up home and home. But that may be more the exception rather than the rule. So I don't know what you'll ultimately get long term, but Tim was asked that, and he's like, they don't need to play us. That's the problem. That they could go 500 in the SEC in that league and get to where they want to go. They don't want to risk things in the preseason that would alter their RPI. They need to stack wins. We kind of laid it out there. So it is what it is.
Yeah, we're talking sports and competition. Why risk anything?
Yeah,
this is not about risk or the possibility of losing. This is about, again, massaging a perception. And obviously that kind of evolves, I guess, from sport to sport to sport as far as baseball, basketball, or football. But somewhat at the end of the day, they're all just kind of a delicate dance to massage your season and have a record that appears to be X or appears to be Y. Maybe basketball, somewhat the most immune from that, I guess, because of the way the postseason plays out. Maybe baseball next on that list, but football, oh God, it's just like smoke and mirrors. It's a magic trick.
Well, in basketball, and the reason I think this made more sense in basketball is because basketball is changing a bit in that, one, yeah, the tournament's going to get expanded, but I think what really altered the course here and made some sense is that these 20-game conference seasons. And so it's fewer opportunities to go play the MTE events. So we need to maybe slightly beef up the non-conference portion of our schedule, because we're not going to get those games in the, in New York or Kansas City or Hawaii or whatever as much, whereas everybody was playing in multiple of these events. Maybe now you just get one. And so you need to do some things otherwise to kind of, and again, from your standpoint, your scheduling challenges are going away. Imagine telling Texas Tech, hey, you can't go play in that Minute Maid Classic or that classic they played in Arlington that Globe Live to start out. You can't. We're gonna shut that down. We're gonna increase your conference season. So, we're not gonna give those opportunities to you to play the Tennessees and the whoever they played initially. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so it's like if you have to remove one of those, it's like, well, we better figure something out. And I think that luckily, other college basketball teams are in the same boat. So, because I think SEC is talking about doing an enhanced, league season as well. So maybe become part of the norm.
Yeah, we could sit here and wax poetic like we have already about losing this opponent or losing that opponent. The only poetry I have left for these conversations is "the hell with them," to quote the great Bob Uecker. Chris, great week with you. Appreciate all the time. Enjoyed it all the while. Looking forward to what should be a fun weekend, and they'll be back on the other side to break it all down. Appreciate you.
Yeah, man, you too. Hopefully see everybody at the arena on Saturday. Have fun if you're out at Dan Law. Guns up, horns down, all that business. Don't throw anything on the turf. And keep hope alive. And we'll talk Big 12 tournament and all kinds of shenanigans next time we reconvene here. Keep hope alive, everybody.
Yeah, and we've seen it at the Jones. They drug out a possum. We saw it at the USA. They drug out a human possum. And I'm just excited to see what they drag out of Dan Law Field at Rip Griffin Park this weekend. You never know who's going to be on the end of some shackles whenever you head to a Texas Tech sporting event. So should be a wild and woolly weekend in West Texas, as most typically are. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.